Hey, let me check in with Gulliver of Mars, which I haven't done for a while. I've been reading a chapter a day out loud, and this is chapters 9 through 14. And as we left off, um, he had gone out, gotten tossed. He had tried to rescue his lady, had gotten tossed overboard into tangles, out to sea, got dragged to the shore by a giant elk of some sort, and now basically, yeah, as I said, it's like in a hard driving Edgar Rice Burroughs novel, we would have gotten to the princess by now, but it feels like maybe halfway, and we're going to have a couple more adventures along the way. It's very picaresque, each chapter. So we start off with him. He does get to shore. He's trying. He's having, he finds a village. He finds people who are much like the Martians that he was with in the city, except these are kind of country ones who are even that much more mellow. And they've got these little ships, which they're like, no, we don't make the ships. They grow the ships, and they're all naked, and they want him to get undressed, but he won't get undressed, and they're all young, and because all these Martians are they're all continuously young until they're suddenly old and they die. But they supply him with a ship, a little ocean-going ship, and they say, okay, well, you need to do this, but you have to make sure you go down this river. If you go down this one, you're going down the river of death, which none return. And so he gets on the thing, but they things go awry, and he does end up going down the river of death. And it's a really kind of weird, eerie sequence where suddenly he gets bonked by a raft with a dead person on it, because it's indeed all these dead people that they send from Seth and I guess probably other Martian cities of this climb down this thing, and suddenly he's just in like a log boom of all these dead people. And they're going down, and they're going to be sucked into a cataract, or they're going to get it's like it's getting colder and colder. He does finally actually manage to leap off this thing, ends up in this land of, it's like, and everything's like all these frozen ice cliffs. And what he discovers is like, holy shit, there are all the dead Martians frozen into these ice cliffs. And indeed, he accidentally thaws out a guy who he thinks he's probably been there for thousands of years. And he's like, how am I going to get out of here? I'm never going to get out of here. But he bumps into an old guy who's more of a woodland barbarian who has discovered this place as well. He's discovered a way into this place as well, and he's collecting the jewelry from the dead people and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, well, I'll show you the way out, but this is all the loot's mine and all that. And he says like, yeah, fine, I'm not interested in that. I need to get on to Arhap. And the old man leads him out and points him in the right direction. He stops at a village where he has a hearty meal and is actually kind of when he was like, he's this kind of rugged sailor, a vigorous American, and you could tell that he's not really in a happy place when he was with the kind of the groovy hippie, sometimes ambiguously gendered Martians of Seth. But these guys are like, whoa, they're men, they're hairy and they're vigorous and they're thing. And he has a good meal and he feels kind of very kind of thing. And the guy sets him up and says, okay, well, you need to go along this trail here, but make sure you stay on this trail. Don't go into the forest over there, because in the forest over there is one of the fallen cities of like Seth and these fairy folk. And it's said that the Queen Yang murdered like 1,000 babies rather than get in her thing of not to get to not surrender and to die. And he's like, okay, sure. And so he goes along the trail, but there's fog, there's mist. He gets lost, and he hears an unearthly noise, and he's like, but he's really cold, and it's like, okay, it's civilization. I'm gonna rush towards it. But as he rushes towards it, he realizes it's a chorus of wailing babies. It's like, is this the ghosts of all the dead babies? and he's rushing, and then suddenly he's on suddenly he's on cobblestone, not in like the city of Seth, and then he's in it, and he monks and he realizes, crap, I'm in the city of the Queen of Queen Yang, which is where we finish off this thing. Again, I'm really enjoying reading this out loud. It's very descriptive, very kind of meditative. He meets an old guy who tries to kind of like, kill him, and he ends up killing the guy. Who it's because they have this discussion over, like, he's the old guy, this guy is making flints, and it's like, well, who made the first flint, who made the weapon? And the guy gets so worked up in it that he suddenly attacks him, and it's like, oh, it's the whole thing of orators, of like, they get caught up in their own words and they start believing them, and it leads to their downfall, which it does with this guy, because he ends up killing the guy in self-defense. But it's like, oh, okay, we're in a different part of the Martian world. This is actually slightly more in a less fantastical way, because they're more like kind of Neanderthals in a way, or not Neanderthal, but just brutish, vigorous, earthy men. That they're much more that than the kind of the soft, fey, socialist, effeminate, probably, Martians that he starts off with. They're much more men's men, which is much more, seems like a John, the Edgar Rice Burroughs John Carter kind of story. So it's interesting. We definitely got these things of masculinity. We have the thing of these the people of Seth and the fairy folk being sort of dissipated. They've evolved to become less manly, less effeminate, and thus their civilization has fallen, and they're now falling prey to the more manly races around them, which is this kind of ideas of masculinity, of evolution, still bubbling around in this time period. This is 1905 versus Edgar Rice Burroughs a little bit later on, but sort of the same kind of ideas, but just much more ruminative, much more just kind of beautiful, much, I don't know, it's not pulp, it's it's more like Lord Dunsany fantasy, I think, in a way, that kind of tradition, like, that kind of an idea versus kind of pulp fiction of like Robert E. Howard. This is more sort of kind of a fantasy, kind of that kind of way, kind of tradition, which is interesting. So yeah, I'm continuing to really enjoy it, as I'm and reading it out loud really kind of helps you. You can't escape bad language, poorly constructed language that way. And I mean, I'm not a good reader, but this has been enjoyable and fun to read out loud. So I am definitely enjoying myself. All right, so that is Gulliver of Mars, or Lieutenant Gulliver Jones, His Vacation, as it was originally published as. All right, more videos later.